What's going on, everyone? Sean here with Triangle of Truth. I am back this week with another rapid review. This week I've got something that I think is very special. That said, this is also something that I kind of came upon this late. I missed the boat with this one for sure. It came out, I'm pretty sure, in 2020. Luckily, I kind of started seeing the later issues like 7, 8, and 9. Was able to find Volume 1. What am I talking about? I'm talking about from Image Comics, none other than Killadelphia Volume 1, written by Rodney Barnes, art done by Jason Sean Alexander. I couldn't even say the name right. Basically, this centers around two main characters, James Sangston Sr. and Jr. What it is James Sr., while investigating a case, is found dead. So the story begins with James Jr. coming back to his hometown of Philadelphia to bury his father. And in doing so, he opens up his father's journal when he goes back to his apartment there in Philadelphia and begins to read it and finds out what kind of case his father was working. And of course, they do a great job with the artwork in this book, I might add. The artwork really complements the story that is being told with the words. This is definitely one of the best instances I can think of where what you're seeing on the page really does a good job of magnifying what the dialogue is on the page. And not only doing that, it also adds to the story. Not saying that that's not something in all comics. This is just one where, to me, that stuck out a lot more than the rest of it. And, of course, they do this. They show you, James sitting there reading. And then they've got the dialogue over here of what he's actually reading out of the journal. And in doing this, he thinks his father has gone mad because his father is suggesting that the case he's working on centers around vampires. Now, surely, vampires are not real. Of course, that's what he's thinking in his head. He's like, man, Pop, you were really losing it on this one. But something in James Jr.'s, just his gut, told him, just reading part of it and some of the things that they experience, especially at the morgue with some of the dead, he's like, I need to go visit my father's grave. And for whatever reason, his gut says, I need to dig him up. And, of course, they leave the first issue in the trade ending off like that, where he opens up the coffin. There's his dad going, took you long enough. I mean, literally, he's just kind of laying there in the coffin looking at him like that. So I found that a bit funny and sarcastic. It just seems like something that my dad or my brother or somebody I know might do to me if I were to do something like that. So you come to learn from James Sr., who's kind of all behind this. The vampires are very much real. He is now a vampire. And in being bitten and being turned, he is now connected to like a kind of a hive mind, a consciousness. I guess telepathically might be a good way to put it. And you find out that it is none other than the second president of the United States, John Adams, and his wife, Abigail. What they did and why I found the story a little bit intriguing when I was reading about it is I like history, love history, whether it's world history, U.S. history, etc., etc. And what they did was they took the yellow fever outbreak from, I believe it was the 1700s, somewhere around there, when they say that John went to visit another country and he comes back with yellow fever. Well, apparently, John tells the story in the book, what this was is he got bitten and turned and came back to the U.S. and started slowly turning people and whatnot. Part of the reason that I think they use John is he doesn't get quite the love of some of the founding fathers, not as much, like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, some of your others. And I think they try to use that as a good basis for this story to show how John can become bitter, why he started doing this plan that, was bestowed upon him by, his trainer, is the way they put it in the comic. And so for 300 years, he has slowly been building this vampire army. And his plan is to basically, what he wants to do is bring the country back and have it run on the principles in which it was founded upon. Because he feels that the current country is corrupt. You know, people really aren't free to do what they want. The problem is, at least one of his followers, who you see is Seesaw, Tevin is his actual name, doesn't believe in this ideology. He thinks that really all John's doing is he's going to rebuild it basically on the same flawed principles that he's trying to overthrow now. He thinks that everybody should be just truly free to do what they want when they want. You know, so that is kind of the little seed right there that they plant in the book. Now, the other thing that they mention when we'll kind of come back here is there is a medical examiner that James Sr. had been working with on this case. And even she was kind of having a hard time believing some of it, except for the events that apparently were happening at the morgue where at night the vampires were actually waking up, banging on the door. And until she sees James Sr. standing in front of her, at that point, then it really kind of hits home. And when he starts explaining the gravity of what's going on, how many thousands of vampires John has already turned, the nests that are throughout the city of Philadelphia, it becomes this big, grandiose event that they're setting up for. And they do a really good job of giving you a lot of story. It's one of those where it's a slow burn. It's a good term to use for it. It's a really slow burn throughout the 6 issues that are in this trade. But at no point did it ever feel slow, boring, nothing. It was extremely enticing throughout the entire book. It's just one of the most fantastic stories that I've read, incorporating, you know, of course, vampires, gore. I mean, there is some gore. There are some moments where these vampires tear some people up. I mean, there's one little girl that you see a few times throughout the book that she just gets in a rage because somehow or another, let me caveat before I tell that, because there's a big piece there that I'm missing. So apparently there's this book that was brought back with John Adams, and it's in such an ancient text. John tried to get his best philosophers, scholars, nobody could decipher it. Well, Seesaw, who he entrusted to keep the book on him at all times, has somehow figured out how this book is, and it's basically magic. And apparently what he had done is he was able to turn this little girl's sister back into a regular human. And she wants her to come figure out how to get, Tevin to turn her back into a vampire so that they can be together for all of eternity. And she doesn't want to do that. So this sets this little girl up. Like I said, this is one of the bloodiest things ever. She's mad. I can understand it. And so she comes up to 2 cops and completely destroys them. Rips their heads off, their arms, sucks them dry of blood, you name it. It is an absolutely brutal and amazing, 2 panels or so in the book. And it's just one of those, this book combines a lot of those elements. You get a great, deep vampire story. You get gore. You get a little death. You get a little bit of a history lesson. And they move along through this, and all the while, the one thing that I'm learning as I'm going through this is when John and Abigail returned, John is, in his own right, still trying to be honorable, I guess is a way. He's trying to do this in a good way. Abigail, on the other hand, is the dirty one. And when I read it, I made a mental note of, is John really the one that we need to be worried about, or is it actually Abigail? And even up to the last issue where James Sr., Jr., and Tevin come face to face with John, you're still kind of wondering. Of course, they have this little bit of a fight and this and that and what happens. And spoilers, they kill John, apparently. Just right there, 6th issue. But here comes Abigail, and she sends a clear message to anybody. If you have any kind of feelings, soft spots for humanity, do away with it. And just, because they're going to make sure that the next battle is just bloody and brutal. So, I'm curious to see where the story is going. I believe it is still ongoing. Hopefully, Volume 2 is just about out, or it might already be out. I've got to look online and find out, because I really want to read this. This, for me, you know, let's just take Something's Killing the Children outside of this. You know, I love that book. I'm never going to get tired of that story. This is very much going to be, I'm pretty sure, on my favorite comics of 2021 at the end of the year. Just my favorite reads. You know, might even be, it could end up being tied with Something's Killing the Children for best reads ever for me. I mean, this to me was one of the absolute best books. I could see why it was so hyped, because as I didn't really learn about it until Image had posted, you know, stuff about issue 6 or 7, and I was like, what is this? And I started kind of reading the synopsis, and I was like, oh man, that sounds really good. And finally one day remembered about the comic when I was looking through my local LCS in the Image section, and I happened to see Volume 1, and I immediately grabbed it. And it was one of those where I'm glad I took the gamble and bought the entire trade instead of getting just Volume 1. It was worth it. I am hooked 100%. If you've not read this, you need to go to your local comic shop, get either the full trade or just get a single issue if that's more your style to see if you like it. I guarantee that you will like this book. If you have read this, let me know in the comments your thoughts on it. Did you like it as much as I do? Did you like it more than I do, maybe? Did you not like it at all? And just let me know why. You know, let's have a good, friendly, calm discussion about the stuff we love, which is comics. Anyways, that is all I've got for this week, guys. As always, please stay safe, stay healthy. I'll catch you guys next time. Later.